I never thought I'd be writing this. You always hear stories about cheating and betrayal, but when it happens to you, it feels like you're living in a nightmare. My name is Jake, and I've been married to Sarah for 7 years. At least that's what I thought. We were the couple everyone looked at and thought they have it all. A pretty house, steady jobs, and a friendship that felt unbreakable. But lately, something felt off, like a song that's lost its melody. It started with small things. Sarah was spending more time on her phone, often texting late into the night. I'd catch her with a sly smile on her face, quickly turning the screen away whenever I'd walk into the room. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe she was planning a surprise for my birthday. Then I noticed her coming home later and later from work, citing meetings that seemed to stretch on forever. One evening, I was sitting on the couch, flipping through the TV channels, when I heard her in the kitchen, laughing. A light, airy laugh that I hadn't heard in a while. I walked in, expecting to see her on the phone with one of her friends, but she was alone, scrolling through her messages. When I asked her who she was laughing with, she gave me a quick "no one, just a funny meme," and changed the subject. It felt like a dodge, and my gut twisted. Things escalated quickly. One Saturday, while cleaning out the garage, I found a small receipt tucked under a box. It was from a hotel about 15 miles away, dated a month prior. My heart sank. I held it, staring at the name of the hotel, running through memories and moments that felt like they were now tinted with doubt. I confronted her that night. Her reaction was something I never expected. I'd hoped for honesty, maybe a confession. Instead, she scoffed, rolling her eyes as if I was being ridiculous. "Seriously, Jake, do you really think I'd cheat on you? That's absurd." She was defensive, her cheeks flushed, but her eyes were cold. She threw in the classic, "You're being paranoid" line, and I felt a wave of anger and betrayal wash over me. It was infuriating. I wanted to scream, to shake her and make her see that I was being unreasonable. I tried to explain how I felt, the doubts that had crept into my mind, but she just doubled down. By then, I felt like I was talking to a wall. Every excuse she provided felt rehearsed, like a script she'd memorized. I went to bed that night feeling hollow. I had believed in her and us, and that belief had been shattered. As I lay there, I replayed our conversations, her laughter, everything that felt like a lie. I was a mess, caught between anger and heartbreak. It was all-consuming, and I knew I had to find out the truth. That's when I decided to take matters into my own hands. I started to dig. I needed proof of her betrayal, something tangible that I could confront her with. I found myself lying awake at night, heart racing, thinking of what I might uncover. I set to work, piecing together her schedule and tracing her steps when I wasn't around. I even began following her when she left for errands. The more I dug, the more it began to unfold, and I started to see the cracks in her alibis. I was becoming obsessed, but I needed to know. I had to expose her. This spiraled into a dark rabbit hole, and as I pushed deeper, I realized that I wasn't just looking for answers. I was preparing for revenge. I wanted her to feel what I felt, to understand the depth of my betrayal. And that's when I discovered the name, a private investigator. It was a name that would change everything. I remember the sick feeling in my stomach when I found that receipt for the hotel. She had been seeing someone who was supposed to be a professional, and there was something particularly cruel about that. What was the worst part? I couldn't just confront her. I had to find a way to make her pay. I assembled my plan, and it was intricate. I had decided that I wouldn't just catch her. I would turn the tables and expose everything. I was going to take back the power that she had ripped from me. What I didn't know yet was how this would all unfold, how I would go from a heartbroken husband to a man with a vendetta. But it was coming, and I could feel it in my bones. With that revelation, I felt a flicker of courage ignite within me. I was ready to confront the truth, and I was ready for revenge. As the days turned into weeks, I grew more determined. I began to follow Sarah more closely, documenting her routines like some sort of detective. This was a far cry from the life I had imagined for myself, a life filled with love, trust, and companionship. But my heartache morphed into a steely resolve. I had to gather evidence, not just for my own peace of mind, but to show her the truth of what she had done. It wasn't long before my late-night surveillance paid off. One Friday evening, I noticed her dressing up more than usual. She was wearing that red dress I had bought her for our anniversary, the one I used to love seeing her in. She spent an extra hour getting ready, and when she finally walked out the door, I felt a mix of anger and sadness. I decided to follow her that night, hoping to uncover the truth. I drove slowly behind her car, my heart racing as I kept my distance. She headed to a bar downtown, a place we used to frequent when we were dating. I parked a few blocks away and watched her walk inside, my stomach churning. Moments later, I saw him, Daniel, a private investigator. I recognized him from the website I had checked out earlier. He was the one she had been seeing. The sight of them together was like a punch to the gut. They laughed, shared drinks, and leaned in close, whispering secrets. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, the betrayal coursing through my veins like a venomous snake. I snapped a few pictures with my phone, my hands trembling as I captured the moments that would expose her lies. I sat in my car, seething, watching the facade of my life crumble right before my eyes. They left the bar together and I followed them to the hotel. I parked a distance away, my heart racing as I saw them enter the building. I waited there, feeling like a voyeur in my own life, a feeling that was both empowering and horrifying. I had to remind myself that I was doing this for justice, for the truth, no matter how much it hurt. After what felt like an eternity, they finally emerged. I could see them laughing as they walked to the car, completely unaware of the storm brewing underneath my calm exterior. I snapped more photos, determined to capture every moment of their betrayal. It felt surreal, like something out of a cheap movie, yet it was my life. I drove home in a daze, the weight of my discoveries settling heavily on my shoulders. Once inside, I stared at the photos on my phone, the evidence of her infidelity staring back at me. I felt a sick mix of anger and sadness wash over me. This wasn't just about her cheating, it was about the deception, the lies that had woven their way into our marriage like a poison. The next day, I met up with a friend, Mike, to talk things over. I needed someone to share this burden with, someone who could understand what I was going through. As we sat at a coffee shop, I laid it all out for him. The late nights, the suspicious behavior, and finally, the photos of her and Daniel. Mike's eyes widened as I showed him the evidence, and I could see the anger bubbling beneath the surface for me. "This is messed up, man," he said, shaking his head. "You need to confront her. She needs to know you know." I nodded, feeling the weight of the decision. It wasn't just about confronting Sarah, it was about taking back control over my life. I needed her to see how her actions had shattered our trust. But before that confrontation, I had a plan for revenge that needed to be executed meticulously. I reached out to a few friends who had connections in the legal field. I wanted to get a better understanding of my rights. My mind raced with ideas of how to use the information I had gathered, not just for confrontation, but to expose her lies on a grander scale. I had a plan in mind, a way to catch her off guard and reveal her betrayal without giving her the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. I thought about how I could turn the tables, how I could make her feel the same helplessness I felt. It was all coming together, and I was more determined than ever. As I prepared for the confrontation, I felt a mix of excitement and dread. I was entering uncharted territory. The thought of how Sarah would react filled me with a strange thrill. Would she lie? Would she beg for forgiveness? I was ready to lay it all bare. Days passed in what felt like a blur, and I finally set a date for our showdown. I wanted it to be somewhere special, a place that used to mean something to us. The restaurant where we had our first date seemed fitting. I planned for everything, the ambience, the timing, even how I would present the evidence. That evening arrived, and I could feel the electricity in the air. As we sat down, I made small talk, pretending everything was normal while my pulse raced beneath the surface. Sarah looked radiant, blissfully unaware of the storm that was about to hit her. As we went through dinner, I felt a knot tightening in my stomach. I had rehearsed what I would say, how I would confront her, but in that moment I was a whirlwind of emotion. A part of me wanted to back down, to avoid the confrontation altogether. But I had to see this through. "Sarah," I finally said, my voice breaking through the ambient noise, "I need to talk to you about something important." Her expression shifted slightly, a flicker of concern crossing her eyes. "What's wrong, Jake?" she asked, her tone laced with feigned innocence. I took a deep breath, ready to unveil the truth of her betrayal and my plans for revenge. It was time to turn the tables in the most unexpected way. "Sarah, I know about Daniel," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil swirling inside me. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken accusations. Her reaction was immediate, a look of confusion that quickly morphed into a defensive glare. "What the hell are you talking about?" She shot back, her tone sharp. "This is ridiculous, Jake. Are you seriously accusing me of cheating?" I leaned in closer, lowering my voice to maintain an air of control. "I have proof, Sarah. I've seen you with him. I know everything." I pulled out my phone, ready to reveal the photos that would shatter her facade. "You think I'm just going to sit back and let you lie to me? I followed you. I saw you at the bar. I saw you go to the hotel." Her eyes widened, disbelief etched across her features, but beneath that veneer I could see the flicker of panic. "You followed me. That's insane. You're being paranoid. You know how I get when I'm stressed at work. I wasn't with him. You're misunderstanding everything." I slid my phone across the table, the images glaring back at her like a mirror reflecting her deceit. "There's nothing to misunderstand, Sarah. This isn't just a misunderstanding. This is you betraying me. You've been lying for months." She picked up the phone, scanning through the pictures. I watched her face closely, hoping to see regret, shame, or even a hint of guilt. But instead, she scoffed, tossing my phone back onto the table like it was a piece of trash. "This doesn't mean anything. You have no idea what you're talking about." Her denial was infuriating. I could feel my anger boiling over, threatening to spill into a full-blown confrontation. "You think I'm just going to let you brush this off? You're the one who's been unfaithful, Sarah. I've poured my heart into this marriage and you've thrown it away for a thrill." She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms defensively. "You're being dramatic, Jake. You have no idea what you're doing. This is all in your head." The anger boiled hotter within me. "No, this is happening in real life, Sarah. You've been lying to me this entire time. I deserve the truth." Suddenly, she looked around the restaurant as if realizing for the first time how public this conversation had become. "Can we not do this here?" she hissed, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You're making a scene." "Maybe I need to make a scene," I snapped back, my resolve hardening. "You need to understand the gravity of what you've done. This isn't just a small mistake. This is a betrayal of everything we built together." Her expression shifted and I could see cracks beginning to form in her carefully constructed facade. "You don't know the whole story," she finally said, her voice softer, almost pleading. "Then tell me, what is the whole story? Is it worth throwing away what we built?" I pressed, my heart pounding. I was desperate for some semblance of honesty, but all I got was deflection. She took a deep breath as if she was steeling herself for a confession. "Jake, I was feeling lost. You were so consumed with work and your ambitions that I felt invisible. Daniel was just someone who paid attention to me, someone who made me feel desired," she admitted, her tone shifting from defensive to remorseful. "It was just a mistake. I didn't mean for it to go this far." A part of me wanted to believe her, to grasp onto the notion that it was a fleeting moment of weakness. But the betrayal felt too deep, too profound. "So it's just that easy for you. You just throw away everything we've built because you felt neglected." I scoffed, bitterness seeping into my words. "It wasn't just that. I was lonely, Jake. I didn't know how to talk to you anymore. Everything became so routine, so monotonous. I thought you'd understand." "Understand what? That you'd cheat on me with a private investigator. That you'd lie to my face." I interrupted, frustration boiling over. She looked away, her defenses crumbling as she realized the weight of her actions. "I know I messed up. I didn't know how to fix things. I thought I could find what I was missing somewhere else. I didn't want to lose you." "Then why didn't you talk to me? Why didn't you come to me before throwing everything away?" My heart was racing, both anger and hurt coursing through me. As I sat there, grappling with her admission, I felt a strange mix of compassion and fury. I wanted to scream, to call her every name I could think of, but I also felt the ache of vulnerability. The woman I loved had betrayed me, yet I could see the fear in her eyes as she faced the fallout of her actions. "I don't even know who you are anymore," I said quietly, the weight of finality in my words. "What do we do now, Sarah? How do we move forward from this?" A long silence filled the space between us, and I could see her fidgeting with her hands, lost in thought. She finally looked up, tears glistening in her eyes. I want to fix this, Jake. I'll do whatever it takes. I shook my head, feeling the fractures in our relationship widen. It's not that simple. You've broken trust, and trust doesn't just come back overnight. You've made your choices. Please, she pleaded, her voice cracking. I love you. I made a mistake, and I promise it won't happen again. Just give me a chance to prove it. But as I looked into her eyes, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was a moment of desperation, not love. It was a plea for forgiveness, but deep down, I knew that the damage had been done. This was no longer just about love. It had become a battle for one's dignity and self-respect. I need time, I finally said, my voice firm. I need to think about what's next. We finished our dinner in silence, the weight of her betrayal hanging over us like a storm cloud. I could see her picking at her food, her mind racing with thoughts, but I felt numb. The confrontation had laid bare the reality of our situation, and I knew things would never be the same. As I drove home that night, the anger which had once fueled my desire for revenge began to morph into something else, an overwhelming sadness. I had always believed that love could conquer all, but now I was left to grapple with the shattered pieces of a life that once felt whole. I needed a plan, not just for revenge, but for healing. I needed to reclaim my life and figure out what I truly wanted. The confrontation had opened the floodgates, and now it was time to decide how to navigate the aftermath of betrayal and deception. How could I find closure in the chaos she had created? Little did she know, I wasn't finished yet. The next phase of my plan was slowly taking shape, and it would ensure that she understood the consequences of her choices. In the days following the confrontation, I found myself in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Part of me was still reeling from the shock of Sarah's betrayal. I replayed her words over and over in my head, dissecting each statement, searching for any glimmer of truth hidden beneath the surface of her excuses. I felt lost, betrayed, and hurt, but there was also a growing sense of determination within me. I wasn't going to let her walk away from this unscathed. While I was still processing everything, I decided to play the long game. I wanted to ensure that Sarah fully understood the consequences of her actions. My initial plan for revenge was clear. I would expose her affair, but I needed to do it in a way that would hit her where it hurt the most, her reputation and her sense of security. I needed to make her feel the weight of her choices. I started gathering more evidence. I'd already captured the hotel photos, and now I needed to make sure I had everything I needed to paint a complete picture. I contacted Daniel and managed to track him down through some work connections I had. The goal was simple, to make him feel the heat of the situation as well. I wanted him to know that I was aware of the affair and had no intention of letting it slide. One evening, I decided to pay Daniel a visit. I found the office address listed online and drove over. The sun was setting, casting an orange glow over the city, and I felt a rush of adrenaline as I approached the building. My heart pounded in my chest, not just from anger but from the sheer thrill of taking control of the situation. I walked into the office with a calm demeanor, but inside I was a storm. Daniel was on a call when I arrived, so I took a moment to gather my thoughts. His office was filled with generic office decor, but there was a stark contrast between the professional environment and the personal betrayal that had taken place. The moment he hung up, I introduced myself, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. Jake, right? Sarah's husband, he said, attempting to sound friendly. The way he said her name sent a rush of anger coursing through me. Yeah, we need to talk, I said, my voice firm. He shifted uncomfortably, sensing the seriousness of the conversation. Is everything okay? Not even close. You know exactly what's been going on between you and my wife. I want you to know that I have pictures, evidence of your little affair, and I'm not afraid to use it. I don't care if you think it's some private investigation game. This is real life, and people are getting hurt. He stammered, looking taken aback. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, man. It was a mistake. Sarah said things were complicated. Complicated? Is that how you justify cheating with a married woman? I interrupted, my anger boiling over. You think this is just a game? You need to understand that I'm not going to let this slide. I've got connections and I will expose you both. This isn't just about you and Sarah. This affects your career, your reputation." Fury flickered in his eyes, but I could see he was beginning to understand the gravity of the situation. "You don't have to do this. We can figure something out." "Figure something out? You think I'm going to just walk away from this? You both made your choices, and now you'll face the consequences. I suggest you start thinking about how you want to handle this before I take it public." With that, I turned to leave, but not before delivering one final blow. "If I hear of you contacting her or trying to manipulate the situation in any way, I won't hesitate to make your life hell." You think you can just play with people's lives and walk away without repercussions? Think again. As I stepped out of the office, I felt a rush of satisfaction. I had taken the first step in my plan, and I was ready to follow through. I wanted Sarah to see that I wasn't just some passive husband who would roll over and accept her betrayal. I would no longer be the victim in this scenario. I would reclaim my power. When I returned home, the atmosphere felt different, charged with an energy I hadn't felt in a long time. I had taken control, and while I was still grappling with the emotional fallout, there was a newfound determination within me. I had a purpose, and I was ready to execute the next step of my plan. A few days later, I decided it was time to confront Sarah again. I wanted her to see that I was no longer just a pawn in her game. I was the player now. I called her and asked if she'd meet me at the same restaurant where we had our last explosive conversation. I could sense her nervousness over the phone, but I kept my calm exterior intact. When she arrived, I could see the apprehension on her face. She looked beautiful, but it was overshadowed by the tension that hung between us. We ordered our drinks, and I took a moment to gather my thoughts before diving into the conversation. "Sarah, I've been thinking a lot about everything. You need to know that this isn't just going to go away. Your actions have consequences, and I'm not just going to ignore what you did." Her eyes widened, fear flashing across her face. "Jake, I told you I want to fix this. I'm sorry, I'll do anything." "Anything isn't enough, Sarah. I've reached a point where I need to consider what's best for me. You've hurt me in ways I can't even describe, and I won't allow myself to be walked over any longer." "But we can work through this," she pleaded, desperation creeping into her voice. "I love you. I made a mistake, and I'm committed to making it right." I leaned forward, my expression serious. "What's done is done, and I need you to understand that I'm preparing for the next steps. I'm gathering evidence, and I've spoken to Daniel. You both need to understand the weight of your choices." Her face paled, and I could see her grasping for words. You wouldn't actually do that, would you?" "I absolutely would. You need to feel the consequences of your actions. If I have to endure this pain, then so do you. I will not be the only one suffering." She looked like she was about to cry, the realization of what I was saying slowly sinking in. The power dynamic had shifted, and now she was facing the reality of her choices. "Jake, please, I never meant for it to go this far." I was confused, and I thought it was just a phase. "I love you. Love is built on trust, Sarah, and you shattered that trust. You made your bed, and now you have to lie in it. I can't just pretend everything is fine." The tears flowed freely now, but they didn't sway me. I had spent too long in a state of vulnerability, and it was time to reclaim my dignity. "I need to focus on what I truly want," I continued firmly. "I'm done with the lies and the manipulation. You can either choose to take responsibility for your actions, or you can face the fallout. It's your choice." As I finished speaking, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. For too long, I had let Sarah dictate the terms of our relationship, but now I was taking a stand. The power had shifted, and the road ahead would be mine to navigate. The confrontation had been difficult, but it had also been liberating. I had finally acknowledged the hurt I felt and was ready to face the future. I wasn't just going to accept her apologies. I would make sure she understood the consequences of her betrayal. As we left the restaurant that night, I could feel the weight of the world lifting from my shoulders. No matter what happened next, I was ready to face it head-on. I had taken the first steps toward reclaiming my life, and I refused to let anyone, including Sarah, dictate my path. The aftermath of that night felt like a turning point. After I confronted Sarah, I could sense a shift in our dynamic. She had gone from being the confident, dismissive partner to someone who was genuinely fearful of the consequences of her actions. I could feel the tension in the air as we navigated our daily lives. She tried to reach out to connect, but I remained guarded. I wasn't ready to forgive or forget. I was still processing the pain she had caused. Every day presented new opportunities for me to reclaim my life. I began focusing on myself, rediscovering hobbies I had neglected during our marriage. I hit the gym, took up painting again, and even reconnected with old friends. This journey wasn't just about revenge or exposing Sarah. It was about rediscovering who I was outside of being her husband. In the weeks that followed, I carefully mapped out my plan. I felt empowered by the knowledge I had gathered about Sarah and Daniel, but I also knew I needed to ensure that whatever happened next would be a decisive blow to their relationship. I wanted them to feel the ramifications of their actions and to understand that cheating doesn't come without consequences. I contacted a lawyer friend of mine, someone I trusted implicitly. I needed legal advice on how to handle this situation, especially considering how public my next moves could be. We discussed potential outcomes, and it was comforting to know I had support. I wanted to ensure that, when I made my next move, I would be protected. After multiple sessions with my lawyer, I decided to take the plunge. I prepared a detailed document outlining all of Sarah's indiscretions, complete with screenshots of the evidence I had collected. I felt a sense of satisfaction as I compiled everything, forming a clear picture of her betrayal. It wasn't just about hurting her. It was about ensuring that she realized the impact of her choices. The day finally arrived when I would put my plan into action. I arranged to meet Sarah at our home. I wanted to confront her one last time before I made things public. The atmosphere felt charged as I paced around the living room, preparing myself for the conversation that lay ahead. I could hear her footsteps approaching and my heart raced. "Hey, Jake," she said, her voice hesitant as she stepped inside. She looked different, less confident than before. I wanted to talk about everything. "Yeah, we need to talk," I replied, my tone firm. "I've been thinking a lot and I have made some decisions." Her eyes widened with concern. "What do you mean, decisions about what?" I held up the document I had prepared, watching as her expression shifted to confusion. "About our relationship and your choices. I've collected evidence about your affair with Daniel and I'm ready to take action." Her face paled and I could see the shock ripple through her. "You wouldn't." "Oh, I absolutely will. This isn't just about us anymore, Sarah. This is about holding you accountable for your actions. I've reached out to a few individuals who can help me make this public if necessary." She opened her mouth to speak but quickly closed it, seemingly at a loss for words. "You don't have to do this. We can still work it out. I'll do anything." I shook my head, feeling the weight of my resolve. "You think I can just forget everything? You think apologies are enough? You've broken my trust and this is the only way you'll understand the severity of what you did." "I didn't mean to hurt you, Jake. I was just lost. Please, I'm begging you." Her voice was desperate now, and I could see tears forming in her eyes. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when she realized the depth of the consequences. "Sarah, this isn't about forgiveness. This is about recognizing that actions have ramifications. You chose to engage in this affair and now you have to face the music." As her panic set in, I felt a strange sense of empowerment. I was no longer the victim, I was the one in control. The tables had turned and now it was time for her to confront the reality of what she had done. "Jake, please, let's talk this through," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "I can show you I'm committed to fixing this. I'll do counseling, I'll do whatever it takes." "Counseling might be a step, but it doesn't erase the damage you've done. I need to think about what's best for me now." My voice was steady, but inside I was still grappling with the emotional fallout. The tears streamed down her face and I felt a twinge of sympathy, but I quickly buried it. I had to stay strong. "This is what you wanted, isn't it? To live without consequences. To have your freedom without feeling the weight of your actions. Please," she cried, her voice breaking. "I want to make this right. I love you, Jake." I stood firm, knowing that I had to see this through. "Love shouldn't come with betrayal. You've lost my trust and it'll take more than words to rebuild that. You need to live with your choices." With that, I turned away, feeling the heaviness of the moment settle around us. I had laid my cards on the table, and now it was up to her to deal with the fallout. I wanted her to realize that her actions had consequences far beyond her own desires. As I watched her dissolve into sobs, I felt a mix of bitterness and satisfaction. I was paving the way for my own healing, even if it meant confronting the pain head-on. I was reclaiming my life, and I wasn't going to let her take that away from me. That night, I went to bed with a strange sense of peace. I had done what I needed to do, and now I was fully prepared to follow through on my plan. I would expose her betrayal, not just for myself, but for anyone who dared to hurt others in such a selfish way. I was ready to embrace the storm and come out stronger on the other side. The next day, I set my plan in motion. I contacted a few key people in my network, including a journalist I knew who specialized in relationship stories. I laid out the entire situation, emphasizing the importance of holding individuals accountable for their actions. I wanted Sarah to know that the choices she had made wouldn't just disappear, they would haunt her. As I prepared to make my next move, I felt a mixture of anticipation and dread. I was aware that the storm I was about to unleash would have repercussions, not just for Sarah and Daniel, but for me as well. But I was ready to face whatever came next. I had reclaimed my power, and I was ready to see it through to the end. As the days passed, the anticipation mounted. I had laid my plans, and now it was time to set the wheels in motion. I reached out to the journalist I had spoken to, a woman named Lisa, who had a reputation for digging deep into stories of infidelity and betrayal. I explained my situation in detail, sharing the evidence I had gathered and the emotional turmoil I had endured. She listened intently, her interest piqued. "This is a powerful story, Jake," she said, her voice filled with understanding. "It's not just about the affair, it's about the consequences of betrayal and the impact it has on families. We can frame this in a way that resonates with people." With her guidance, I prepared a comprehensive dossier that included the photographs, texts, and a detailed timeline of events. I felt a sense of liberation as I shared my narrative, realizing that I was no longer a victim but a man reclaiming his power. The day of the article's publication arrived, and I felt a mix of exhilaration and anxiety. I had no idea how Sarah would react or how Daniel would respond. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my phone as I awaited the first wave of reactions. I had shared the article with a few close friends, and they were eagerly waiting to see how it would unfold. When the article went live, it felt like a bomb had dropped. The headline read, "The Hidden Costs of Infidelity, One Man's Journey Through Betrayal." I watched as the likes and shares began to multiply, my heart racing with every notification. Comments flooded in, from empathy to outrage, and I could feel the tide turning in my favor. Within hours, the article had gained traction, and I began receiving messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Friends and acquaintances reached out to express their support, sharing their own stories of betrayal. I felt a sense of community building around me, and it was comforting to know I wasn't alone in my pain. But soon, the fallout reached Sarah and Daniel. I received a text from Sarah shortly after the article went live. It was a flurry of emotions, ranging from anger to pleading. "How could you do this to me? This is humiliating. You've ruined everything." I thought about her words carefully before responding. "You ruined everything the moment you decided to betray me. This is the consequence of your actions, Sarah. Maybe now you'll understand the pain you caused." I imagined her reading the article with a mix of anger and shame. I wanted her to feel exposed, to understand the gravity of her choices. I was done being the victim. I was ready to reclaim my dignity. Meanwhile, Daniel didn't take the news well either. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that he had been confronted by his own colleagues. The affair had cast a shadow over his reputation, and he was scrambling to contain the damage. I felt a sense of satisfaction knowing that he was feeling the repercussions of his actions. I wanted to make sure they both understood that betrayal came with a price. In the aftermath, I focused on my healing journey. I sought therapy to help process the emotions that flooded in from both the article and my interactions with Sarah. It was a difficult but necessary step. I realized that while exposing them was cathartic, I also needed to heal myself. I wanted to emerge from this experience not just as a man wronged, but as a stronger individual ready to embrace the future. Weeks turned into months, and as the dust settled, I found myself in a much better place. I had spent time rediscovering who I was, focusing on personal growth, and surrounding myself with supportive friends. I even started dating again, taking things slow but enjoying the prospect of new beginnings. The experience had taught me valuable lessons about trust, love, and the importance of standing up for myself. One evening, I received a message from Lisa, the journalist who had covered my story. "I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing. Your story has resonated with many people. It sparked a conversation about fidelity and trust in relationships." Her words filled me with pride. I had turned my pain into a narrative that could potentially help others, and that felt empowering. It was a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there was a light to be found. As I reflected on the journey, I recognized that while betrayal had shattered my world, it had also opened new doors. I was no longer defined by Sarah's choices. I was carving out a new path for myself, one built on honesty and self-respect. I learned that love is not just about passion. It's about trust, communication, and mutual respect. Betrayal is a painful lesson, but it can also be a catalyst for personal growth. I wanted to be a beacon of hope for others who found themselves in similar situations, reminding them that they too could reclaim their power. In the end, I realized that while Sarah had broken my heart, she also helped me find my strength. I was no longer the person who would accept betrayal without consequence. I was moving forward, ready to embrace whatever life had in store for me next. I had survived the storm, and now I was ready to thrive.